Hello, and welcome back to a small starting series on my channel, OC Intros. This video will feature this stinky man right here. This is a series where I talk about my characters and my worlds. It's mostly ramblings of an artist who spends way too much time in their own head. If you're new to this series, I do recommend you go and watch the first episode in the series about my character April. I'm going to be talking like you are already familiar with April and the groundwork I laid out for the Caddel family and the world of Haven. In the last video, I had mentioned that I didn't know what I wanted to talk about as far as the world building goes, and I didn't know what was spoilers and what wasn't. Well, I finally decided what I can and can't talk about, so this video might or might not be a little bit longer than the last one. With all that being said, let's just jump right in. Meet Collin Caddel, an angry, stinky ball of self-hatred. He's 26, and his general personality is summed up as just anger. He enjoys cooking and taking care of his little sister April. He is a retired mercenary that was kind of prominent in Paldea and the general world of Haven. But again, he's retired for reasons that we'll get into a little bit later. Nowadays, he works for his and April's guardian, Palos, to run Castaway Tavern, and will constantly go out and collect bounties or just make money in any way he can. He does largely feel very guilty that he can't make very much money for his household, despite Palos telling him that it's fine and he doesn't care. But because of his guilt, Collin does what he can to make money and support his little sister and his guardian. Growing up, he was a golden child. Remember back in the last video when I said that having two different types of magic is like kind of rare and nearly unheard of? Collin is one of those people. Yes, from the same family that had this little magicless child, also had one of the strongest magically gifted children ever. However, this proved to be an issue to Collin's upbringing because his father was a megalomaniac and his mother was obsessed with his father, so she did nothing to stop the abuse that his father put him under. Because of his outstanding magical abilities, his father put him under intense training that tested his magical and physical ability. You must keep in mind that Collin was very young when all this was happening. The maximum age that he was while this was happening was 6, because that's when April was born. When April was born, everything changed, because their father suddenly saw Maeve, their mother, as weak and a failure. Just when April was a wee toddler, when she wasn't lifting toys with her mind or making her favorite food appear or having flowers bloom around her, her father saw her as defective and left the family. This crushed Maeve, but it really freed Collin and April, especially Collin. Collin loved his baby sister and took it upon himself to take care of her, even at such a young age. Obviously, his mother did heavy lifting for a little while, but after their father left, Maeve essentially just started ignoring her kids, which Collin was perfectly happy with. He hated his parents to begin with, and nothing mattered outside of just making sure his little sister was safe and happy. But again, things went awry when Maeve started experimenting on April. Collin was the one to see and know what their mother was doing to April. But again, he doesn't talk about it because he doesn't want to stress April out. And he's the one that keeps everything bottled up in an attempt to protect his little sister. And there was no way for him to stop this either. He had no one he could go to, as the family lived a quite secluded lifestyle, and he didn't know any other adults unless it was like networking or something. And even then, he didn't trust adults with anything. Plus, you also have to keep in mind that Collin was so young. He had barely reached the age of 10. If you watched the previous video, you'd know that Collin and April's childhood home burned to the ground with presumably their mother inside. And that's when they moved into the tavern with Palos. After some coping and burying some feelings, Collin took up a mercenary job, the one that we talked about earlier. This job went very well for a while, and Collin even seemed to be getting better, and most notably, Collin made a very close friend, Jay. Jay was a really positive dude and seemed to rub off on Collin as well. They worked well together, and they became really fast, very close friends. For the first time, Palos was seeing Collin take interest in things like cooking and taking care of himself, and he just started to really bloom into himself. He was still very cynical and an asshole, but he was himself. He was becoming happier and, like, finally taking steps to heal. And then some very spoilery mystery things happened, and everything came crashing down. Palos noticed that Collin hardly cooked anymore, didn't go out, and Palos ended up learning that Collin had quit his mercenary job, and he wouldn't tell Palos why. Collin had once again become very quiet, overly cynical, and even more of an asshole. He would lash out in anger, and the people in his life had no idea why. The only people that ended up staying in his life was Palos and April. Jay, as close as they were, no longer seemed to be friends. If anything, they seemed like they were enemies now. And again, no one knew why. This wasn't an internal thing for Collin because he had the tendency to bottle things up and not talk while he was having problems. And outwardly, it made him seem like he was just having a 180 in his personality. This is also where a lot of the self-hatred came from, because he really hates that, to him, he has the temper of his father. His father would get very angry at him very quickly, and because of all the abuse that he suffered at the hand of his father, he just did not want to become that, and once he realized that, he started bottling up even more. All his anger and his sadness, he just kept fully inside himself. So now he appears very apathetic. The only person to have really seen the entirety of his personality, minus the stuff that happened with the mercenaries, is April. And it goes the other way too. Collin has seen everything of April's personality. Both April and Collin have the same problem with bottling, but the only consistent person the two of them have been able to lean on is each other. They trust each other with their lives. With April leaving for the equivalent of college, though, Collin is about to lose that very close relationship in his life. He's very excited for his sister, but he's also very anxious about it. He is a little bit of a helicopter parent, and neither of them have been away from each other for extended amount of time. Besides the time that, Collin has worked with the mercenaries, and he traveled for short times. But not for longer than, a week. But now, they would be away from each other for a minimum of, a year. Or, well, that was the plan. Collin is one of the most interesting characters to me, mostly because of all the issues that he has. If I were to make Haven into a series one day, Collin would either be the most loved character or the most hated. Collin is an abrasive asshole, but he's going to be doing even more heinous things before he can get better. Collin is doing as much as he can, but he is not healed, and he is going to make some massive mistakes in the future. Mistakes that will put him and April's relationship to the test. Mistakes that put him further into a hole before he can climb out of it. But personally, I think that makes him more human. He's for sure one of my favorite characters to write. I'll say this again, even though I said it in the first video too, but all of this is subject to change because, again, this is just ramblings of an artist that spends way too much time in their head. I love writing, and I'm hoping you stick by whatever changes I eventually make, and I hope you're excited to see the next installment of OC intros. Now that I'm graduated from college, I have way more free time on my hands. I am hoping to have a video a month at this point, intermingling videos like these with speed draws and animation or animatic content. I have a few really cool ideas that I want to do, so if that sounds really cool and you want to see more, please subscribe and stick around. Also, I have a KOFI, where you can support me with donations, where you can see some behind-the-scenes content for just $5. And $5 donations get you a little shout out at the end of my videos, like you're seeing on screen right now. So I hope that entices you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye!